Well, hello, everybody. We're going to gather for a minute here. My name is Abe Bonowitz with Death Penalty Action. I'm sitting here in Columbus, Ohio, where I live, and just getting ready to share a little bit about what we're doing at Death Penalty Action and what's new and what's on our minds. Give you some thoughts. So, as we gather, we can see that everything is working. Looks like we are live. So welcome, and thank you. Let me turn this down on my monitor. Okay. It is Wednesday, September 10th, and we're a little bit more than almost 3/4 of the way through the year, and already 30 executions. And in the first 6 months of this year, we had as many executions as we had in all of last year. And now we're looking at least 8 or 9 more executions. It's probably going to be more like 13 or 14 more executions this year, which will bring us to, if we get to 43 executions in 2025, that'll be as many as we've had in, we've not had that many in a single year since 2011 and 2012. So what that means is it's a record-setting year for executions in the United States. Now, obviously, things could be a lot worse. In Iran, they had somewhere around 180 executions just in August. We're not Iran, not yet. Don't expect to go down that path. But what we are seeing is a spike of executions in the United States that we all need to be concerned about. And Death Penalty Action is standing up to be opposed to every single one of them. And we're working with our allies that are in the different states where the executions are happening. Florida is in deep crisis mode. Missouri has a very high profile for them coming up. We're working really closely with Missourians against the death penalty. We've got one more execution scheduled this year in Tennessee, but 5 are expected in 2026. We're going to see more executions in Texas. Depending on, we've got another year in Ohio, depending on what happens in the Ohio governor's election and in the Ohio legislature. There are more than 30 people with execution dates set in Ohio, but the current governor, Mike DeWine, is not allowing them to go forward. He keeps rescheduling them, but depending on who the next governor is in Ohio, and if we're able to pass our bill to abolish death penalty in Ohio, we could see even more crisis just in that state. At the end of the day, what we're talking about, though, is the need to continue being present to every single execution that happens in the United States. And that's kind of what Death Penalty Action is doing. Uniquely, it would seem, in the movement. We're going to be hearing a lot of noise. I just saw another announcement that John Grisham, the author, apparently has written a book about Robert Robertson, who's up for execution October 16th in Texas. But for some folks in our movement, that's all they're talking about, when we have 6 other executions between now and then, at least. Because what we've seen in Florida is each time they execute somebody, they set another date for 30 days out, keeping 2 to 3 people on the schedule for execution just in Florida. So we want to make sure that we're talking about all of them. And let me just show you our webpage real quick. If we could share the screen here, you're going to see our webpage, and right at the top, you'll see this conversation about the Execution Crisis Fund. But we're going to scroll down, and you'll see a little bit past here to where you get to the petitions. And that's where we have the most, the upcoming executions are here. And if you click on the More Executions link, the More Execution Petitions, I should say, then you'll see what the schedule's looking like. And we've got an execution in Florida next week, and then 2 executions at exactly the same time in Texas and Alabama. We'll be down, and we're expecting the death penalty action team to be on the ground in Alabama around that execution, and then to launch a campaign the next day with the Execution Initiative Project, the Execution Intervention Project, I should say, around Anthony Boyd's case. But then, hop back to Florida for Victor Jones, and then an execution on World Day Against the Death Penalty, right, on October 10th in Indiana. Nobody's talking about that yet, not even the Indiana group. It's kind of a puzzle, but we're going to be raising a lot of noise around this. We need everybody's help to be raising more noise, making a lot more noise, and to be creating more attention. And I know it's tough to do this. I'm going to talk about this in a moment. Just to get back to, I was talking about this case, Lance Shockley in Missouri, strong innocence claim, really strong innocence claim. He's been denied his DNA testing that he thinks could be very helpful to him. There's a whole campaign that's building around this. And outside of Missouri, nobody else is talking about it except for us, which, as far as we could tell, and I hope I'm wrong, but I'm sort of staying pretty up to date on different groups' emails and what they're sending out, and we're not seeing anybody talk about this case. Let me back up to the list again, and you see the same week as Lance Shockley is scheduled is Robert Robertson. And then beyond that, you've got another execution in Arizona. We're told this man, Richard Jerf, I'm not exactly sure how he pronounces it, is really he's done. He's ready to go. He doesn't want a lot of campaigning. We're still going to call out the fact that it's happening and demand that it be stopped. But, can't really blame somebody to say, I'm done. I can be free if you execute me. It's the only way you can get an assisted suicide, by the way, in this country, really, in most states, is if you are guilty of murder and on death row and you say, go ahead and kill me. Then we're looking at Anthony Boyd in Alabama, another case of, probably have the wrong guy here. And you're going to be hearing more about that. But in addition, Anthony Boyd is a leader in the state group in Alabama. He's the chair of the board of the Project Hope to Abolish the Death Penalty, which is the main anti-death penalty group in Alabama. Its board of directors is on death row. There's now the first of the groups to do that. There's now a second group in Mississippi that has a similar type structure model on that in Alabama. And then, of course, there's that last execution in Tennessee. So I'm going to back up from this webpage and go back to the main page of Death Penalty Action. And that's where you can see really the theme of this talk is, and why I'm out on here today, is to talk about the Execution Crisis Fund. And really, it's strike that word fund off of it. And that's what we're talking about, is the space that we're in this country. Let me stop sharing the screen now. The space that we're in this country is the spike in executions. And also, we're seeing, the Trump administration. If you go back, if you look at our petition, our pledge to stop executions, maybe we'll show that in a moment, on the webpage of Death Penalty Action under campaigns. There's a Take the Pledge link, and within that, that's what we're calling out. The Donald Trump's executive order signed within an hour or two of him taking office back in January. The executive order on the death penalty talks about expanding the death penalty, orders the Department of Justice to so-called Department of Justice. It's actually Department of Injustice right now, but it's tasking them with going to help the states find the drugs it needs to carry out executions or whatever else it needs, and also, to expand the numbers of cases where they're seeking the federal death penalty. And it's really kind of curious, especially because we've seen this Department of Justice back off on a death penalty prosecution for a white mass shooter who shot up the Walmart in El Paso And here you have more than 20 people killed for the crime of just shopping while brown, because that's what that shooter did. He wanted to go and kill as many Mexicans as he could. So he traveled hundreds of miles to El Paso and then shot up a Walmart, killed, I think, 23 people. And they decided not to seek the death penalty for him, probably for a completely legitimate reason. And yet at the same time, within a week or two of that decision, Attorney General Pam Bondi came out and said, we're going to seek a death penalty for this guy, Luigi Mangione, who, let me show you that petition here. We're going to go back into the webpage and scroll down to get this going here. Yes, so there's the petition for Luigi Mangione, and you can find it's right on the front page of deathpenaltyaction.org. And we don't normally, actually, they might have jumped off of that part of the front page, but we're going to get that back up there. We're going to find, you'll be able to find this shortly. But at the end of the day, and we'll put this into the comments on the live stream here. We don't normally get involved in a case at this early. I mean, this guy is not even, it's still totally in pre-trial. There's another hearing next week. And what's amazing is just the amount of attention and the amount of support for Luigi Mangione, obviously because of the nature of his alleged crime, the victim in this case, one white corporate executive. Everybody's upset with the health insurance situation, and that's, ostensibly the motivation. Can't talk about why this guy's motivation was what it was, but because there's so much attention on this case, we created this petition. And what's amazing is that we're finding people who are finding it because of this, and they're also getting involved in the other cases and in the executions that are happening now. And some people are donating and helping us do this work, and they're finding us because we're engaging in this case. That's the kind of spin or pivot is a better word the death penalty action is able to do, because we're small and we're spry, and if we get an idea, we can implement it, and we do, in order to engage folks. And let me stop sharing this again, but it's super exciting. Our communications coordinator, Ali Sullivan, has been working with the folks that are working on the Luigi Mangione case. They're publishing this week a book list that they asked us to help curate, so that people who are concerned about the Luigi Mangione case can actually read about the broader death penalty issue. And we engaged our membership, Death Penalty Action's membership, in how do, what are the books that people are reading? What are the books that were pivotal in coming to a better understanding of the death penalty? For me, one of those books was Among the Lowest of the Dead. Of course, Dead Man Walking and Just Mercy. There's many books written about the death penalty, but the bottom line is that we're collaborating with that team, with the folks that are engaged on that particular case. Plus, we have a team of people in New York City that will be out there holding our signs for calling for no death penalty, not even seeking a death penalty, and other cases, because that's how we engage people, especially right now. With all the dumpster fires that are going on every day. It's another distraction from our administration, and people should be focused on these other bigger issues and the dismantling of our Constitution and our constitutional protections. These are new things to many people who just haven't had to pay attention, but they're old things for us who have been working on this issue of the death penalty for a very long time. Things like the right to due process, things like demanding evidence of guilt before punishment. The fact of the matter is that former Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia basically opined that it is constitutional to execute a person who may be innocent so long as they've had due process. Well, again, what is due process? And do we have it? And what I can tell you is that we've seen over and over and over again in the last few years this thing called procedural bar, which basically says you've already had your shot to raise that, and it doesn't matter that you brought up that you have new evidence to look at now. You've already had that try in the legal process, so it's too late to bring it up. And we've seen the execution of people where new evidence actually calls into question their guilt, where evidence of racism has come up in the court, in the jury, and so it's very clear that that death sentence was handed down in a biased and unconstitutional way, and yet there's no way to get relief because of these procedural bars. And these are legal terms. I'm not a lawyer, but what I can tell you is that because of these hiccups, or because of these things that really anybody that thinks about this from a fair perspective, wanting fairness in our legal system, wanting equality in our legal system, looking at it and looking at the death penalty, you can see the breakdown of the criminal legal system is on steroids when it comes to the death penalty, because we're executing people. It's extra in that space, and we need to do something to stop it. So in this space where each one of these cases has real questions about the fairness of our system and about, do we have due process that treats people according to the 4 words carved into the face of the U.S. Supreme Court building? What are they? Equal justice under law. Do we have that? I mean, anybody that has ever encountered our legal system in the United States, whether it's in the civil side or the criminal side, knows that we don't have equal justice under law. What we have is how much money is in your pocket and what kind of justice can that buy you. So what we're looking at now is just this idea of, can we fight the system in a way that exposes these problems, that makes people think about these problems and wake up, so that when we get to a place where maybe we can change the law because we have had a shift in who's making the policies. That's the space that anybody that cares about this breakdown of our Constitution, constitutional protections, and anybody that cares about having a criminal legal system that actually gets it right every time and is fair and equitable across the board. It is us that have to rise up and make sure that we keep pushing back and get to a place where, if we can have a fair election, which I think is a question right now, if we can have a fair election and change who's in the policy-making positions in Congress and at the state legislatures, that we can fix these things and correct them. But what we have to do in the meantime is make sure that we're shining a spotlight on every single one of these executions, pulling out and highlighting the egregious injustices that Donald Trump would never put up with. But what he gets, all of us should get, because that's how the law should work in the United States, is a full and fair evaluation of your case according to and against the protections that are supposed to be in place. So according to the U.S. Constitution and the laws in this country. So what we have to do is keep shining a spotlight on that. And that's where death penalty action comes in. We're not lawyers. We rarely are able to get deeply engaged in long-term campaigning on individual cases. We've done a little bit of that. We're still really fed up that Melissa Lucio is still in prison, but it's because of our work. She's still on death row. Just this morning, I checked the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. They hand down their rulings every Wednesday morning. And still, no ruling on the motion that's submitted and signed by the Cameron County prosecutor, Louis Syons, and the judge in her case who actually sentenced her to death. Both signed this document saying, essentially, dismiss her conviction and her death sentence and send her back to court so we can address it. And when that happens, she will be freed, because what we know is that there was no crime, that there was no murder, that Melissa Lucio was coerced into a confession that was a false confession. She was almost executed. 2 days from execution, and that's now been 3.5 years. she's going to walk out. And we were deeply, deeply involved in that case. And we can't do that in every case because we just don't have the resources. And it's like drinking from a fire hose right now with all these executions. We've got a short respite, no execution this week, but next week. And then 6 more between now and October, probably at least 10, perhaps 12 or 14 before the end of the year. We're in an execution crisis. And that's why we're asking people to support a future without executions. And that's why we've created the Execution Crisis Fund. This is really just a mechanism for people to give more funding to death penalty action so that we can maintain this work. Not just us, give to the state groups, give to other groups, but if you can help death penalty action maintain the work that we're doing, our part of the movement, that's what we're asking for. And that's what the opportunity is. And that's why in the comments of this video, and obviously you can look at it right now, the bit.ly/execution crisis fund, capitalized execution crisis and fund. We're asking people to donate whatever we can in a way that helps us maintain our programming and hopefully build it. What are some of the things that we're doing? We just had as many as 70 digital billboards up in Utah. Last week, we had to shift out of that basically because we were focused on the firing squad execution that was scheduled there on September 5th. And that execution was staged, which took that whole picture out of the attention of the media. That whole question of not just of are we going to execute a guy with dementia who doesn't really understand what's happening to him, but do it by shooting. And are we going to do it? This is one thing that we've helped expose. We're going to do it using a mechanism where sometimes it turns out the people that shoot the guns in a firing squad are deliberately not aiming center on the heart. They're aiming off center in order to prolong the person's death. And that seems to be deliberate. Can't prove it, but the record shows it, and where the holes are in the people that they've killed shows that as well. It's one of the curiosities, Idaho earlier this year, passed legislation to make the firing squad the primary method of execution. And now, according to a news item in the Idaho Statesman just the other day, they're actually looking at how to automate the firing of the guns. So a human being does not have to be involved. That's actually probably a good thing in that taking out the human element of aiming the gun suggests that perhaps it'll be at least straight on, because we know if you get hit directly in the heart with a bullet, then your death is within seconds. But if you get hit off the heart, just in the major organs, then it's going to take a couple minutes to bleed out. We've seen that. So, again, for us, it's not about how we kill our prisoners, but that we kill the one the system is broken. And yet, because there's all this attention on the method of execution, gas suffocation, electrocution, lethal injection, all the problems inherent with that, as well as firing squad. People pay attention because of that stuff. And anyway, because there was that extra attention, somebody put up a little bit of money, and we had to raise more money to get it up to speed to create these billboards that we did in Utah. It says, shoot straight. If you're going to do it, shoot straight. We're not asking for anybody to execute, but if you're going to do it, get it right and don't make it that much more suffering. And it's being able to do things like that. Some of you may remember around the case of Emmanuel Littlejohn, we put up some digital billboards in Oklahoma City. Around the case of Anthony Sanchez, we put up static billboards. So the same image the whole time. It's paint. It's just the same thing all the time. For a month in McAlester, Oklahoma, where the executions take place in that state, for a month it was watch this film that we had made. We spent, I think it was about $7,000 to make a film about Anthony Sanchez and why we think he was innocent. And after it was clear that they were going to execute him, we changed the language to say, "Thou shalt not kill." And he was without sin cast the first stone. And there was another one that ultimately our targets for those messages were the executioners themselves and people who support the death penalty. And it's these kinds of different and new tactics. Maybe they're not entirely new in the world, but they're certainly pretty new and unusual in our movement. And we'd love to do more of that stuff. So on top of having the extra money it takes to do special projects like that, 70 digital billboards up across Oklahoma, 250,000 impressions of our message, cost about $5,000. And we need to have that kind of money set aside and ready when we need to do that sort of thing. The static billboards in a small town like McAllister is a little bit different. That's about $1,500 for 2 months, which was actually a pretty good deal, especially when we get news coverage on that activity. So that's the kind of thing that we're really good at. It's the kind of thing that we've done in the past. It's the kind of thing we want to do more of. And on top of that, we also need to cover our overhead, which is also a struggle right now because of the way the economy is going. We're seeing, and we're not alone in this, other organizations have actually had to shut down, closed entirely, or close their death penalty work entirely because of the loss of funding. So, we're not beholden to big grant givers, foundations, or the government. We don't take government money at all. But because people are having a harder time, and with the recession that we're in now, the cost of living is going up, we're asking those who are able to give a little bit more or to give something. Now's the time. That's what the Execution Crisis Fund is for, is to find the people that are able to help and say, now's the time to help on this issue. And yes, there are many other issues that are worthy. I encourage people to think about it this way. If it's a worthy issue and lots of people are giving to that, then that creates a little bit of space. That creates a little bit of space to take your what available funds you have and put them into something that nobody else is giving to, or that few others are giving to, and that's work to stop capital punishment, and in particular death penalty action. Although we encourage people to support Witness to Innocence and the Catholic Mobilizing Network and your state organization, whatever state you live in, if there's a death penalty and there's a viable state organization that's working to fight it, support them too, as we do, as I do personally when I have extra money. But today, and in this era that we're in, this era of an execution spike and really a crisis of more executions, we're asking for your support with death penalty action. So that's why you have this link, and maybe we can show the webpage again. All you got to do is go to deathpenaltyaction.org, and you can find it right there at the top. If we just we'll put this up here. Can we show the webpage again? Here it comes, I think. Yes, there we go. Thank you. So we just need to get over to the webpage, and that'll be coming in just a moment. So it's at deathpenaltyaction.org. And right there at the top, Execution Crisis Fund, and you click on that, and that's where it goes to this page. And what we're asking people to do, here, let's scroll down on that just a little bit. You'll see we're talking about the spike in executions. You'll see you can use Venmo, you can use PayPal, you can use Google Pay, you can use Apple Pay, you can use your regular credit card. But I wanted to show you also this, this picture that's here on the donation page. That's Charles Keith, our Impacted Communities Liaison, with Carol Frazier, the mother of Demetrius Frazier, who was executed in Alabama earlier this year. I think it was in February or at the end of January. This picture was taken in January when we helped amplify Carol Frazier's voice. This is in the lobby of the building where the governor of Michigan has her office, Governor Whitmer. And we were there because Demetrius Frazier had a life sentence in Michigan and had been wrongly transferred to face his death sentence in Alabama. And because of that, we believed that the governor of Michigan could have ordered him back to her state to live out his life sentence, and she failed to do so. But we were lifting up this woman's voice, Carol Fraser, to support the to call for and beg for the life of her son. And why I'm showing you this and why this is important is because this photograph was just used in an article that was published on Thursday or Friday last week in Alabama about the challenge to the gas suffocation executions. And so it's our work that populates and illustrates sometimes unrelated articles unrelated to the image that it's showing. Anyway, that's why this picture is here, because we wanted to lift up the fact that we're amplifying the voices of the people that are impacted by this issue. And you're going to always see more about that. You see that on our monthly program, The Forecast, where we look at upcoming executions. You'll see that in the vigils, the virtual vigils that we do at the time of each execution. So let's scroll back up here a little bit, and you can see again, it's the Execution Crisis Fund. We can use whatever support people can put in, whether it's $5 or $5,000 or even more, or whatever it is in between, and especially if you're able to. So another piece of the puzzle that we're looking to do is add people to our sustainer fund. So there's a button, you get invited to make it monthly. And if you can do that, it allows us an ability to plan, to know what's coming, and to have a steady stream of revenue, which is important in the times that we're at. So let's stop sharing the screen again, and I'll just again make a final call. And I'm going to look at the Facebook page and just see if there's any questions I can answer. Let's see here. Do we have any questions? Okay. Well, there's Ebony. Hi, Ebony. Thank you for watching. So Attorney General Drummond in Oklahoma has asked for October 30th as a date for Kendrick Simpson. Okay, so they are having a problem carrying through with the execution of Tremaine Wood, another person who's a law of parties case. He was present to the crime but didn't actually kill anybody, but they're having trouble carrying through that execution. So they're trying to set another date. And let's see, where did that go? I lost my my comments here. Just looking to see if there's any questions. So I invite you at this time. Thank you, Ebony, for your comment. And thank you, Ali, for putting the links to the petitions and all that in the comments here. And there is a QR code, right in the corner of this window that will get you to the right place as well. And not seeing any other questions, I'm going to just wind it down again. But I thank everybody for watching and for your support. We are grateful to have the support that we do, and especially people that are able to share this video and our other videos and our other posts that we make. By the way, that does remind me that there's ways to actually engage deeper with us. We have a social media action team that you get special alerts of when it's time to make sure to share certain things, so that helps us boost up the visibility, because the more engagement the posts get, the more Facebook allows others to see it, and that's important, especially now when there's this shadow banning going on. If it's a message that they don't like, they suppress it, and we want to make sure that we're countering that to the best that we can. And also there is a fundraising team that we're also building, to just inviting people who we know to help this work as well. We all know other people that some, you don't know what a person's capacity to give is, but if we don't invite people to help, we're actually robbing them of the opportunity to help. And that's how we have to look at it. It's not an ask, it's an invitation. Not everybody's going to give to any particular issue. Not everybody's going to give to this issue. But we don't know if we don't invite that opportunity to help. So that's what that is. And whether you're officially on the fundraising team, there's a link that should be in the chat here on this video to sign up for these things. Also, I do want to mention this evening at 7:15, right back here, there will be a workshop about corresponding with people on death row, people facing execution, what you can do to help lift somebody up and give them a bigger window to the outside world, and just create some love in the world and some help for people that are in the deepest, darkest holes imaginable. So with that, we're going to keep coming up with new and different opportunities and ways for people to help. But at the end of the day, the bottom line is this: every execution must be opposed. And in this space that we're in, where executions are on the rise in the United States, it does mean the death penalty is getting worse, but more and more executions are happening. And while that's happening, each one of them is an outrage, but also an opportunity to help invite more people to understand this issue. Because it's in understanding the issue that people come to their opposition to allowing government the power to execute its own citizens. Right now we're pretty much executing people that are convicted, rightly or wrongly, of criminal offenses. But the path that we're on towards authoritarianism, it doesn't take a whole lot of a stretch to recognize what's happened in other countries, what's happening in other countries right now, and what has historically always been a concern, and what we've seen in the past in many ways, that you can be executed for your opinion, or for being on the wrong side of an issue, or for being the wrong something, color, religion, ethnicity, et cetera, et cetera. God forbid we get to that in the United States, but that's a path that it could be on. And same thing, that's why we can't trust government with the power to kill. So with that, if you just came late to this, I want to again invite you to chip in to the Execution Crisis Fund, which we're using to help us figure out ways to better highlight the death penalty and better draw attention to the fact that executions are happening, and that there's an increase of executions that is happening, and that we have to stand up to every single one of them, not just the ones that are going to get more attention because of a particular issue or particular organizations and celebrities are putting more energy on those. We're going to make sure that we're paying attention to every single one. Every execution gets attention. So with that, I will stop and invite you to share this video. And we're always open to your questions and comments and suggestions. So with that, I want to thank everybody and wish you all the best. Join us again tonight at 7:15 p.m. And also join us tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, where we'll be meeting our new board chair and our new board member. We have two new board members. One new board member replacing Reverend Sharon Risher, who's stepping away from our board. And among our board members, Reverend Brandy Slaughter will step into the chairmanship of Death Penalty Action's Board of Directors. So you get a chance to meet and hear from all of them. And of course, we'll be talking a little bit more about the work of Death Penalty Action and how people can help. So thank